All right, Junkie Nation, here we go. Gorgeous George and Goes delivering on another MMA superstar. It's former Bellator lightweight champion and current UFC lightweight. What's going on, Chandler?
How are you, man? I am excited to be here.
Yeah. So we've talked offline, but we haven't talked online since you became a member of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Or part of the – what did I say? A member? It's not like it's a club. I guess you're part of the roster now.
Some guys think it's a club, but no, yes, I am here to win the UFC lightweight title. So no, it's awesome. I'm, you and I have talked offline, I think numerous times about this prospect of me coming over to the UFC. I've gone through numerous contract negotiations in the past with Bellator and never quite found, never had an inkling to go leave. But this time we did. We took a chance on ourselves, beat Benson Henderson in August, and here we are in the UFC.
All right, so take me to it. When you met with Dana, that was in Vegas, obviously, right?
Yeah, I didn't meet with Dana. I spoke to Dana on the phone. I met with me and Randall, my manager. We met with Hunter Campbell, sat there for about an hour, and I was very pleasantly surprised with how well the meeting went. The meeting, there's no surprise that we were going to mesh well. I think I bring a lot to the table. And as I said to Dana later on, that I think I'm probably going to be one of the most equally yoked guys that they have ever signed to their roster, as far as what I stand for, my tenacity inside the cage, my propensity to be a professional and get the most out of this body and the most out of this career. So, I'm excited about the future. I know Dana and Hunter and the UFC brass, the matchmakers, Sean Shelby, he's jazzed up about all the matchups. And, it's worked out well so far. We'll see what happens. October 24th is coming very soon. And, I'd like to fight possibly by the end of the year. So we'll see what happens.
All right, Chandler, slow down here. We're still on the Dana meeting. Hunter, I'm just curious, why wasn't Dana there? And I asked this only because they asked Dana if he's interested in meeting Michael Chandler, and he goes, I'm very interested. Was it just a scheduling thing, or does it now all go through Hunter?
No, it was just a scheduling thing. Yeah, I mean, as you saw, and Dana didn't have to say those, I guess those nice things that he was saying about me in those post-fight meetings. Once he was getting asked questions, and then he answered truthfully and honestly. We had not spoken at that time. I had not spoken to anybody at the UFC. My manager Dave had conversations and said, no, Chandler is still under an exclusive negotiation period. We are okay with the delayed gratification of however long this process takes of this exclusive negotiation period. We are going to be men of our word, men of our ink on the contract that says for X amount of time we will be exclusively negotiating with Bellator. We did that, and then as soon as we got released from that exclusive negotiation period, the next day, we started having conversations with the UFC. A couple of days later, I was out in, I went out to Vegas, and the meetings were supposed to be happening, but obviously, when you're preparing for Fight Island, like Dana was, when you have a brand new infrastructure built on Yaz Island, and you got all these shows coming up, you're doing shows every single weekend. You are the worldwide leader in mixed martial arts. The guy who is in charge of continuing to move professional sports forward. He knew that we didn't necessarily need to meet in person to get a deal done. We spoke on the phone numerous times, and here we are. I'm signed to the promotion.
Okay, I was just curious. You ooze charisma, man, inside and outside the octagon, and I just wasn't sure because you come with a hefty price, but I felt like if he can shake his hand, look him in the eye, and let Chandler explain why he should be paid that, Dana will do it because he loves passionate fighters. And I'm going to take a timeout right here. Every other fighter that's working their way up into the professional ranks, follow a guy like this guy right here. There's a lot of guys that out there that lay an egg in those types of meetings, or they're free agency, or whatever. And Chandler, I thought you comported yourself like a true professional. And I remember telling you, have fun during this period because it's stressful. But I said, have fun too because you're going to get courted. You know what I mean? And so hopefully it was fun. Hopefully it wasn't as stressful. But that's kind of why I was asking, just because, like I said, I feel like this has been a long time coming. But hey, the deal got done, and eventually you guys spoke, and you guys, I'm sure, will probably have a steak at the Mandalay Bay strip steak one day and just really get to know each other?
Yeah, well, we've spoken on the phone, half a dozen times since I've signed. The day that essentially I knew that I was going to be a UFC fighter, we spoke on the phone 2 different times, and from that point on, I knew a deal was going to get done. I knew for a fact that a deal was going to get done. I could hear it in Dana's voice. Dana gave me his word. Dana is a man of his word, and we knew we were going to get a deal done. A couple days later, we get a deal done. Couple days later, it gets announced on SportsCenter. So, it's we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the last couple weeks through phone calls, through text messages, and I think just a mutual passion for the sport. Like you said, and I told Dana this, I said, hey, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to be in that meeting and be confident in my abilities physically, emotionally and spiritually to be the superstar, the world champion that you need. 4 years ago, I definitely wouldn't have been. Right now is the perfect time for me to become a free agent, coming off the biggest win of my career and signing with you. And now the sky is the limit. So I'm excited about what happens here at the end of 2020 or moving into 2021.
Did Scott Coker and Bellator make a final run, or was it a slam dunk after you met with the UFC?
I think it was pretty much a slam dunk. Scott Coker and I have a phenomenal relationship. Scott Coker is a man of his word, and he and I have worked closely, as well as Rich Chu and Mike Kogan. Man, they have a great staff, and the way they handled things was great. At some point, as you've seen Scott Coker come out, and since I've signed with the UFC, he talks about still being a fan of Michael Chandler, still being a fan of mine and following my career and hoping that I do well. And that's not just so that he can say, hey, the former Bellator champion is now the UFC champion. I think he truly he likes what I have brought to the table for the last decade. I fought for Bellator for almost a decade. Bellator is very much who they are because of the blood, sweat, and tears that I have poured into the organization, and I am who I am, and I signed this deal and got a good deal because of my time at Bellator and their promotion of me. So it was a mutually beneficial, symbiotic employee and employer relationship. And just like you talked about, when it's time to get that job opportunity, that job interview, you have to come with passion and charisma, but you also have to have a good track record of being a good employee. Being a good fighter isn't enough in this industry. Being a good worker in your field isn't enough. You have to be a good team player. You have to be good in front of the camera, behind the camera, in front of the public eye, behind the public eye. You have to be able to dig deep and work hard in the trenches, and then you have to be able to exude that kind of passion out in front of the public eye. So mixed martial arts is no different. Just because we are professional athletes doesn't, sometimes we forget that we need to be professional as professional athletes. I've done nothing but try to be a good professional inside my profession of being a professional mixed martial artist, and being a good employee has always paid off for me. It paid off for me for numerous contract negotiations with Bellator, and now it's since paid off for me with a great track record now with the UFC. And I promise you, when this contract is over, Dana and everybody's going to say, man, this guy is a man of his word. He does what he says he's going to do. He's a good employee, not to mention the fact that he goes in there and bites down on his mouthpiece and gets puts on great shows for the fans. So we're going to keep him. We're going to pay him even more.
There you go. So how many, we'll stay away from the money for now, but how many fights? 4, 6, 8? Or how does this work out?
A decent amount. Less than 10, more than 2. I don't give contract details out. You know that, man.
Well, it was,
even though we should,
we signed with Bellator once that it was a 4 or 5. I mean, we figure it out anyway when you basically get to the end of the fight, but that's fine.
Exactly.
However, this is where I'm going to be really nosy. We interviewed, I'm going to hit you from right field right now. Eddie Alvarez, we interviewed him. I don't know if you caught that. And, huh?
Yeah, I said you told me you interviewed him.
Okay. Yeah, we interviewed him, and we were just catching up with him, because he's obviously an all-time great like you are, in the lightweight division. And now he's over at 1, and we're wondering when he's going to get back. And we get around to asking him about you. And here's why it made sense, because One Championship is building their stable out there. And we wondered if he was disappointed that they didn't sign you, because obviously that could finish the trilogy. It could add to their stable. And he had nothing but nice things to say about you, but he did say something that was interesting. He said, Wait till the other UFC lightweights find out how much he's getting paid. He got a good contract. And then we said, wait a minute, repeat that. And he stressed it. And then we asked him, what do you know? And he goes, just like you, he played poker. And he goes, hey, I know those kind of things or whatever. So I don't know. Is there a truth to what he's saying?
I think I wouldn't have signed the deal if I didn't think it was a good deal. And I think I'm getting paid a reasonable wage to paid a reasonable wage to render my services inside the UFC octagon. And I think my track record speaks for itself. I think obviously it was a perfect storm of everybody vying for my services. You know, obviously when every major MMA organization on the planet wants to sign you and they're giving you good deals, and then you have the types of meetings that I had with Hunter Campbell and the phone calls that I had with Dana White and the promises that I've made to them. And I think they already knew. They've known for the last decade the kind of man that I am, because even if Dana doesn't watch the other organizations like he takes an interest in the UFC, he sees guys out there and he sees these certain guys, the way they operate and the way they handle themselves. So he's known for a long time that if that guy continues to perform inside the cage, if that guy ever becomes a free agent, we definitely want to talk to him. And then the way things just steamrolled and the way my conversations went with Hunter Campbell and the way my conversations went with Dana, you know, I'm not saying I got the best deal in the world, but I am happy with my deal. And either way, the deal's irrelevant. I've never fought for, you know, I've never looked at the money, never thought about the win bonuses or the show money or any of that. I've always, inside that 15 or 25 minutes, I got a job to do. And it just so happens that now I'm going to be doing it in black UFC gloves and inside an octagon instead of a circle cage.
Okay. Well, to be clear, Eddie was happy for you. Goz and I were happy when he said it. And I'm sure everybody's happy, you know. So and Scott Coke has been nothing but cordial and very nice and complimentary. And I know he's rooting for you. So, all right, putting free agency to the side. Actually, one more question. Was it a deal done like in person, or did you wait for a phone call? And I ask you this because Gilbert Melendez is somebody we covered for a long time. And when he came over, he also told us the story. I guess he wound up talking with Lorenzo Fertitta. And so he did like you, man. He risked it. You know, he gambled on himself and he got a really good deal, but he talked about being on the phone and just it wasn't so much of like, it was just for having confidence in himself and the team is what he was happy about. You know what I mean? Either way, he was going to get paid and he was comfortable wherever he was going to go, but he was really stoked. Did you have that type of a feeling as well? Yeah,
I mean, it was a roller coaster of emotions, you know, because you're negotiating with numerous organizations. You're getting phenomenal offers from numerous organizations, but you know, and you may have heard me say this in other interviews, I knew where I wanted to go. I knew where I wanted to be. I knew where I wanted to fight next. I had phenomenal conversations with heads of other organizations. And I still am a fan of every organization on the planet. I'm a fan of mixed martial arts. I love hand-to-hand combat. But when it comes to what I wanted to happen, I wanted to fight for the UFC. That's what I wanted to do. I just needed to get a good enough deal for me to say yes, and for me to, you know, probably leave money on the table, you know, if you really get down to it. But so yeah, it was a roller coaster of emotions, and then it became, you know, obviously there's matching rights in Bellator contracts, and then, you know, you get a great deal from the UFC, then your biggest fear becomes, well, shoot, what if Bellator matches, you know? And then so you kind of just go through that roller coaster of emotions. And you know, I'll never forget, I was actually tree shopping with my wife when I got the call from a three-way call from my manager, Dave Martin and Randall Alleman. They called me and said, hey, this is the offer. And I was extremely excited, extremely happy about the offer. But I was walking around a tree farm with my wife, picking out trees, and she took a picture of me, and we kind of like, you know, we'll be able to save that moment forever when I got the actual phone call with the big smile on my face. Because at that point I figured I already knew I knew it was going to be a good offer. I just didn't know how good it was going to be, and it exceeded expectations. And here we are, fighting for the UFC.
Michael, you mentioned some of the differences in what you said about now I'm fighting in an octagon versus a circular ring or cage. And we've heard fighters that have gone back and forth say, as small as that seems to them, the angles actually took like a fight or two to just get used to. But I don't want to talk about those differences. The one I want to talk to you about is the fact that when we see a Michael Chandler fight, almost always they pan to the crowd. Your wife is there, your mom, everybody, all the Chandlers are huddled up. And if you're in the arena, you know there's like 40 or 50 of them running around. And we see your dad in your corner. For this particular fight, things are a little different. There are no crowds. It's a very long distance to travel. Will your father be in your corner for this fight? How will things be working here for you?
My dad won't be. My dad was not in my corner for the last fight either. You know, it was just with the COVID guidelines and the restrictions and the bubble, if you will, it was just too much. You know, it was, and we were still kind of inside that worldwide pandemic, if you will, as we still are today. So since my mom wasn't going to be able to be there, you know, I just said, hey, Dad, why don't you stick back, be with your wife to watch your son, you know, fight. And, you know, it worked out fine. And to be honest with you, I actually love not fighting in front of a crowd. To me, the fight is the fight. I don't get up or down based on where the crowd is. So for me, it's just like a wrestling match. For me, I grew up and put in hundreds and hundreds, probably almost 1,000 wrestling matches with barely anybody watching me. You know, for the most part, when you're wrestling in a tournament, there's 17 people watching you, 17 people actually watching you on the mat. You know, when there's a home duel at Mizzou, when it was a Mizzou wrestling duel at home, there was maybe a couple hundred people there, you know? So I thrive inside the hand-to-hand combat. There's a referee watching me and you, and we're about to get into hand-to-hand combat, a contest of wills. And I loved that. I loved fighting. My last fight with no crowd, I think if anything, I have an advantage because what people talk about the normal UFC octagon jitters, there's not going to be 25,000 screaming people at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. You know, it's going to be, you know, 30, 40 people around a quiet cage at the, you know, the sweet infrastructure that they built there on Fight Island. And it's going to be just like my last fight. I liked the quietness of it. I can hear my coaches better. I can hear his coaches. And really, it's just going to be down to me getting into a hand-to-hand combat contest.
Well, I can't argue with you with that because you're the guy in there. But I will say this. I have been sitting there, round 4, getting ready to go for round 5 with you and Eddie Alvarez, and I heard that pop from that crowd, and God, it seemed like it elevated both of you guys to a different level. It can be pretty nuts, but I understand where you're coming from.
It's true, and maybe it's one of those things where it's just like hindsight is, or like, you know, perception is reality. It's like I know I don't have the option of having fans there, so I'm going to force myself or trick myself into thinking it's a good thing for me. But I will say, imagine I do fight October 24th, and because one of these guys, you know, an injury, you know, happens or whatnot. Imagine my first fight being, you know, in front of that many people, world title fight. There's a lot more kind of at stake, or the atmosphere is a lot different than just me fighting hand-to-hand combat. I think it suits me much better than it suits my opponent.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that situation that you brought up. You could be going up against Habib. You could be going up against Justin. I think it would be really, really hard, I think, for somebody to say 50% of my count went to that guy and 50 to the other. Is there one that you've maybe watched a little bit more footage or trained a little bit more for some of the things that they bring to the table in this fight?
No, because I think really it's not as though I guess you look at it like you just got to train for a complete mixed martial artist, because if you take Khabib's ground game and pressure, but kind of not lack of striking, but less of a chance of getting into a striking battle with Khabib, and then you take the 98% chance that you're going to get into a striking battle with Justin Gaethje, and there's very little ground game in his fights. You essentially take the two that are 90%, 10%. One striking and grappling, one grappling and striking. You put them together and you think, okay, well, I just got to fight a guy who's completely well-rounded. Or you got to train for a fight that is completely well-rounded. And then on fight night, if I do end up fighting Khabib, go back to the 20 years of wrestling that I have under my belt. And if you go into a striking battle with Justin Gaethje, think, okay, nobody's been able to take him down. Have a tough chin, keep your hands up. Keep solid defense, go out there, bite down your mouthpiece, get into a couple car crashes. So most of the time inside my training camps, I'm focused 80% of the focus on how can I make myself better? What are my gifts, my attributes, my abilities? How can I increase those and mitigate some of the kind of risks of a fight or positions that I get into bad spots in? mitigate those like I work on every single training camp, and then focus 10% of my 10% of my game on focusing just on Khabib, and then 10% of my camp focusing just on Gaethje. So at the end of the training camp, you find yourself focusing on becoming the best fighter that I can possibly be, with a little bit of Khabib sprinkled in there, a little bit of Gaethje sprinkled in there, and go out there and hope for the best. Let's be honest, man. This is not a normal fight camp. If anything, if one of these guys pulls out, at least I'm preparing for one of two of those guys, and neither of those guys are preparing for me.
That was just what I was about to ask you. Let's flip the script a little bit. Say you were in one of their shoes. How would you approach that? Would you even spend a little bit of time just popping into Michael Chandler footage and watching it? Or is it one of those situations where you just got to wait for it to happen, and if it happens, then you address it?
I think it probably just happens after you address it after it happens. You know, I mean, I think one of those guys would be, it would be ill-advised for one of those guys to be even thinking about me when they got the biggest fight of their life against, let's call a spade a spade. I'm humble enough to take off my, swallow my pride a little bit and say, hey, Justin Gaethje should be more scared of fighting Khabib than he does me. And then Khabib should be more scared of fighting Justin Gaethje than they are me as well. I'm kind of just I'm the insurance policy for the UFC in this case. And they should be focused on each other. If something bad happens, I just hope those guys, still take the fight, because if I go through this whole training camp and go there and weigh in, and then something, injury happens, and then one of those guys has the opportunity not to fight me, then we're in a whole nother bad spot, But I will say this: it does show, it does kind of show the I guess the view of what the UFC and what Dana has of me, to have me come in and be the alternate. I mean, there's 7, 8 guys that they could have said, hey, you're the alternate for this fight if one of these guys pulls out, or make sure this guy or that guy is on the card to make sure that this fight doesn't, if this fight falls through, there's another lightweight on the card. I think it says a lot about where they think my skill set is at, where they think my position in the company is, where they think my position in the rankings are right away, even though I haven't had a fight in the UFC yet.
I saw your recent tweet to Tony Ferguson, so you basically let us know that was a strong possibility on the biggest card of the year, like you said, that it could have been you two. Was he the closest that could have been an opponent for you? The only? Did you have other names tossed in front of you? How was that portion of the whole breakdown of how your first fight would go before they agreed to make you the alternate?
Well, basically here's how it went. And this is what I think just a testament to, you guys know this, you guys have followed my career for a long time. But when I essentially was getting a deal done with the UFC, they said, hey, listen, I know you just fought in August, but would you be willing to fight in October? And I said, absolutely. They said, okay, how about, would you be willing to fight Dustin Poirier or Tony Ferguson in October? Because those guys are scheduled to fight, but they're kind of having some money issues, or they're kind of having some different issues or whatnot. And I said, absolutely. They said, okay, well, I think we already know the answer to this, but if one of those guys doesn't fight, would you be willing to be the backup for the October 24th card? I said, absolutely. So my answer to all 6 of their questions was yes, 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 yes. When you come into an organization, you got to show your worth. And I think that was also my way of not throwing my weight around. I wasn't going to throw my weight around and say, no, I'm not going to be the backup. I'm not going to be your insurance policy. I'm not going to this, and this. So you got a lot of fans or people kind of coming at me and saying, hey, this guy is entitled and he thinks this, and this, when really I swallowed my pride a little bit and I said, hey, I will be just the alternate for this card, for the slight chance that I may fight for the world title, rather than saying, no, it's either a top 5 guy or bust. I'm willing to step in and make weight and be your guys' insurance policy. But yes, Tony Ferguson was on the table. He said no. Dustin Poirier was on the table. He said no. Now, since then, Dustin Poirier has said yes to Conor. Conor, I think, has said yes to Poirier, and that leaves Tony Ferguson. So that's why I said, hey, in his all caps way of talking on Twitter, I said, hey, you already turned down the fight against me on the biggest card of the year. This is the biggest card of the year on Fight Island. Khabib versus Gaethje is going to have the most eyeballs on it. We could have been the co-main event, and we could have got this tournament going, as he likes to talk about, and I can step onto his mat and see how things shake out. And I think I go out there and I think I beat Tony Ferguson, and I immediately put myself in the title picture.
Did the ship sail on that? Can he still sign, and would you fight him?
October 24th?
Yes.
Yeah, I would. That's the crazy thing. I'm already going October 24th. I'm already making weight. So yes, I would definitely fight him, but he's kind of the only guy that I'm interested in fighting right now. I already have that fight. It's already been talked about, so you don't add any other names to that hat whenever a guy in the top 5 is already talked about.
Well, that I guess you answered my next question, because again, I'm hitting Michael Chandler in Google. I'm looking at everything that's the latest, and I see Islam Makhachev doesn't have an opponent, and he throws your name out there. So that was going to be my question: is would you accept that fight?
No, the answer is no. I mean, at this point, I mean, I think there's also already been talks about the next move after this. You know, the ship has sailed as far as, you know, like I said, if Tony Ferguson did say, yeah, okay, I'll be your Huckleberry October 24th in 2 weeks, which if there's anybody out there who might actually do something like that, it would be Tony Ferguson. But yeah, no, at this point, I'm not changing courses at this point. I'm not taking a short notice fight against a guy. As I said, you know, my words have been somewhat misconstrued, and people are just hitting me up left and right. When I say people, I mean like Russians and Dagestanis and all these guys, all the guys on the Khabib train, which there's millions and millions of them. They are crushing me right now with calling me chicken and coward and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't get into this. I didn't sign this contract to just go out there and fight anybody, especially on 10 days or 2 weeks notice, and change an opponent and change the plan and change everything. As of right now, I'm the backup for the world title fight. I'm keeping my body ready, my mind, my body, my soul, my spirit ready for the next move. If that fight is October 24th, it's October 24th. If it's not, Tony Ferguson needs a dance partner later this year or first of next year, so we'll see what happens.
Do you basically go to the Junkie app every morning just to see if anybody's pulled out between Gaethje and Khabib? Or have you even let yourself worry about it, or you know, how are you approaching that part of it? Not that you would want either guy to be injured, but the only way you fight is if they're not able to fight. We'll just say that. Yeah,
no, it's tough, and I've answered this question, you know, like on Instagram Lives or people on DMs or whatever, and it's hard because I understand. I've been in these situations where you get injured or your opponent pulls out of a fight, and you're expecting a paycheck on date X, and that date pushes 2 months later, and you got a family to take care of, and you know. The life of a mixed martial artist, first of all, we don't get enough credit for it. And secondly, we take a lot of crap from fans who don't understand what the lifestyle is like. So the last thing that I want is for one of these guys' lives to be changed in a negative way, either through injury or even positive COVID test or any of 1,000 different reasons why I may step in and they are out of the fight. Not to mention the fact that the UFC has put millions of dollars behind the promotion of this fight, and I get that's part of their business. They got to do that, and that's always the risk that they take. But, you know, I haven't really thought about it. To be honest with you, I've almost shut my brain off to it. Once again, I focus on, okay, hey, how can I take this training camp? How can I take this? You know, I've only gotten 6 weeks to basically prepare for this opportunity. How do I take this 6 weeks? How do I extrapolate out each workouts? Try to stay positive. My body isn't necessarily responding, you know, the way I want it to, because I've basically been in training camp since March. Started training extremely hard in March because I thought I was going to fight in April or May once the UFC started their first card in April, and it got pushed to May. So I thought I was going to fight my next fight in May. If not May, it had to be June. If not June, it had to be July. End up fighting in August. So I was in camp. I was down here in Florida for like 13 weeks straight, just beating the crap out of my body. Took a week off, kind of. Still got my workouts in. Had a couple injuries I was working around, and then basically got the call 2 weeks later. Threw everything in my car, drove back down here to Florida, and I've been down here now for 4 or 5 weeks since then. So my body hasn't exactly responded the way that I want it to, and it doesn't feel the way that I always want it to. So I've just been focused on me, myself, my mental game, my body, you know, making sure I'm taking rest times when I need to take rest times. So I'm not here, you know, obsessing over Khabib tape or Gaethje tape or, you know, focusing too much on these guys. To be honest with you, I'm just kind of going with the flow. You know, I signed with the UFC, huge announcement on Sports Center for a couple days, for a week there. It was just a ton of, you know, UFC PR stuff that I had to do, plus getting USADA into the USADA pool, and then the all the different UFC forms that I had to do, plus the new medical stuff that I had to do that I haven't done before, and just getting onboarded onto all this, becoming a UFC fighter now. So I've really just been taking it in stride, trying to balance it all. And man, I'm going to show up October 23rd on weight, championship weight. If I fight October 24th, I do. If I don't, we get ready for the next an opportunity.
You brought up USADA, and that's going to be a great chance for you to do to everybody that's ever said anything to you about performance-enhancing drugs. Yeah. Over at Bellator, they do test, but this testing is one of the stricter ones in all of sports, not just MMA. How's that been so far? Have you even gotten? I'm sure you've gotten the one test, but how's that been? And has it been intrusive? Or do you have to remember to update the app and all that?
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing. I like to do things right. So I get a text every night where my whereabouts are, because for those that don't know, we actually have to kind of have, I have my residence where I'm at 24/7, or where I'm sleeping, where I'm waking up. Then I have my training times, my locations, what gym I'm training at, when I'm training. If schedule changes, I need to update my whereabouts, my USADA whereabouts, which is actually, obviously it's an extra layer of responsibility that you have to do. But with great blessings comes great responsibility. Being blessed to be in the USADA pool, in the UFC, at the highest level of the sport comes with extra responsibility. So if I have to do that, it's not as much of an inconvenience as it may seem. But no, yes, I have. I've been tested now twice, once at the gym and once here at my house at like 7 a.m., blood and urine. So, it's exciting for me. It's just another part of the job. And I've said this in the past, and people, thought I was a liar or said I was it was a cover up or whatnot, but I kind of have been vocal about how I was jealous of, being at the gym and seeing USADA, coming to the gym and then testing all my UFC fighter friends. And I was kind of like jealous and envious because I was like, man, I just wish I was in the USADA testing pool. It would solve a lot of, naysayers and negative comments for being in, outside the UFC, but also just to let people know that I'm on an even playing field, to let people know, and also just to change people's view of what the human body is capable of, I think people's propensity to call foul when they see the way someone looks, or the heights at which people reach, or the level at which people compete, as soon as they see that, they want to call foul, is just demeaning to the human spirit, the human condition, the human body. So been in the USADA testing pool now for I think 3 weeks, because obviously it took a week or so to kind of onboard me, and you have to do process, and it's meetings, and it's writing down all your supplements and all your, and if you're on any medications or that kind of stuff. And then here we are, and shoot, they could be knocking on my door right now. So.
Well, you definitely don't want to witness that, but I'm telling you, it's just jealousy. And there's different levels to it. Like me, for example, I'm a guy that can't do one pull-up, and I see you doing one arm pull-ups and then letting go in midair and catching yourself. That's me being a little bit jealous. And then there's levels of saying, he's cheating to do that. And that sucks. It sucks. But I wanted to ask you, I wanted to tie that into my last question. You mentioned something about, the Dagestanis and the Russians calling you chicken. The other day I was watching Inside the NBA, and the basketball players like Shaq O'Neal, Charles Barkley, and some of the current ones were reading some social media posts out loud, similar to if you ever watch Jimmy Kimmel when celebrities read mean tweets. And I swear there were some good ones. There were some good ones, not below the belt, but very close. But they were just laughing it off. And I don't know if maybe now we're a decade into the Facebook and Twitter era, probably a little bit more than a decade. Instagram. Do you think fighters will catch up and just be able to laugh that off? Or is there something about the core of the fighter, like the inner being of the fighter, that because you guys can shut somebody up really, really quick, if we got a problem, you want to step outside. Is there something to that also makes you guys defensive when it comes to stuff like that, like people attacking you on social media?
I think I've been desensitized to it. You if you're going to be in the public eye, if you're going to do anything worthwhile in this life, you're going to get scrutiny from it. It used to be, in newspapers and articles and maybe word of mouth and hearsay. Now anybody from across the world can hop on my handle at Mike Chandler MMA on Instagram or Twitter or any of that and just throw something at me, something negative, something throwing shade. I mean, as you guys know, I have an adopted black son, so the amount of racist comments that have come on posts of my adopted son and my wife, you see these things and you of course, like, that's a little bit different. My son's an innocent child, and so when you say something about me, I can laugh it off. It's not a big deal. Even if you say something about my wife, she's an adult. She can handle it. She's a thick-skinned, working, confident woman. But you say something about my son, who's 3 years old, it's pretty crazy, and it just shows the depths at which human beings have wounds, and it's unfortunate. But I think the best thing to do is try not to read them. But then I also subscribe to the notion that if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested. And you have to be interested in what people are saying. You have to know what they're saying about you, whether it's positive, negative, or indifferent. You need to know what they're saying about you so you can either A, prove them right, B, prove them wrong, or C, kind of agree with them and not necessarily change your narrative, but continue to grow, continue to change the storyline, change the narrative. I will be honest with you. I've gained a ton of followers and a ton of following in a bigger platform in the last month or two with signing with the UFC. So in order for me to continue to be interesting and reach out or reach my fans on a deeper level and even reach the haters on a deeper level, I got to know and be interested in what they're saying and what they're doing as well. But as a whole, you got to try to laugh it off the best you can, even when they're nasty and mean. And I'm not a big blocker. I haven't blocked a lot of people up until recently, but if someone says something, about my family, about my son, that's just so ignorant and vile and negative, they get the block and the restrict right away. And at first, back in the day, I always thought, man, that's kind of petty. I shouldn't block this person, because it's their own thing. But now I'm just like, man, I'm blocking hundreds of people at a time if I need to.
I agree, my man. And yeah, I meant more on the stuff that had to do with your athletic career. Family is so over the line. I'm sorry you've had to go through that. What you and your wife did was such a beautiful thing. And I enjoyed watching the video a few weeks back. I didn't look at the date. He didn't submit. He was there at Sanford MMA, and he was showing off a little bit of his striking. So that was really, really cool and touching and warmed my heart to see that.
Yeah, man, he is so freaking cool, man. And it's getting tougher too, I mean, he's old enough now to understand that dad's gone, and right now, it's everybody probably knows this. Anyone who's listening right now who has a child, I mean, there's seasons where he or she doesn't want anything to do with the mom. They only want the dad, or there's seasons where they only want the dad and not the mom. And right now is daddy's season. He wants to be with dad, like dad, wants to do what dad wants to do. And the fact that I am, away from him is tough. So, next step is have numerous places down here in Florida where, me and him, my wife, or bring a nanny down, bring some help down to where I can see him every day before, between, during practices. And because I've made some promises. I made a promise to my wife to love and cherish her and do the best that I possibly can to provide for her. And I made that same promise to my son. So I need to not only, be good on these contractual obligations that I have with the UFC now, but also continue to focus on my number one priority, which is my wife and my son, and be the man that they need me to be. So trying to balance all of it is never easy. But I believe I'm doing the best that I possibly can.
You sure are, brother. And I want to thank you for all the time you gave us. Kind of covered a lot, and I'm sorry we made you retread the whole signing thing. I'm sure you did that a lot with all the other outlets, but we hadn't heard it yet. And like I say, I wanted to kind of go on that little roller coaster with you because for those that don't know, we've known Chandler since he was just in an actual Bellator tournament that led him to the opportunity to fight for a world title, which he won numerous times. But I mean, I think we've openly told Michael Chandler this when somebody came into the studio and said, "Yeah, man, Michael Chandler's the next big thing." We've heard that a lot, and he delivered, and he couldn't have been a nicer guy. And so like we literally. I think we've covered, and a lot of people don't know this too. this is like a little trivia question. You actually fought for Strikeforce. We found that out. We thought we knew everything about you until we were looking. We were like, wait a minute, he had the one fight at one or two at Strikeforce.
Yeah, so the crazy thing is I've had a 26-fight career, and 25 of my fights have been in one of the major organizations. I fought I think it was called First Blood was my first fight in Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri at some banquet hall in front of like 50 people. And then my second and third fight, I fought for Strikeforce and then went into Bellator right after that. So I've been in one of the major organizations 25 of my 26 fights, which is pretty crazy.
Was it a banquet hall or was it some floating riverboat?
No, it was at Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, down there near the lake, but it was at like some Holiday Inn banquet hall or whatever. Tyron Woodley, got me that fight. He was my manager, coach, cornerman, all that stuff.
Okay, you can tell me what you made for that one. What was that? 100 and 100, 50 and 50.
I think I made out handsomely. I think I made like $500, but after I paid for the hotel rooms and we paid for the gas, and I didn't want Tyron to come out of pocket on that stuff. So I paid for his stuff. Obviously I lost about $17. So a net negative of $17, but it is funny too. Yeah. Real quick. Randall Alleman, my manager, he was the first guy who discovered me. He brought me to the guy that he works for now, Dave Martin, because Randall and he wrestled at Arizona State. I wrestled at Mizzou. We wrestled one time over the summer. And then later on, he became a mixed martial arts manager and then kind of reached out to me. I went out to Vegas. Fast forward about a year, he told you guys, hey, trust me, this guy's the next big thing. And I remember him bringing me in, and it was like my first big MMA interview I ever had done before. And I was nervous and I was pumped. It was at the Mandalay Bay Sportsbook back there in the office, or that kind of studio you guys had. And then, so it's kind of funny how it's all come full circle. And then the only guy in the meeting with me at my UFC meeting with Hunter Campbell was Randall Alleman. So Randall Alleman, from the very, very beginning, hitched his name to me and hitched his belief in me, got me to where I am. And now we full circle, sitting at the UFC offices in front of Hunter Campbell. We think we knocked it out of the park, and we got a deal done. And I'm excited to put on those UFC gloves and fight in that UFC octagon for the first time, hopefully soon.
Yeah, and by the way, that roll of the eye came because we heard your name 3 times in 1 week. Ron Frazier, Randall Alleman, and if Goes wants to pop in and tell me who the other one was, but there was 3 of them. That's why it was kind of like, again, but
Gil Martinez. It was outside of the MGM, and it was the
Gil Martinez, Ron Frazier, and Randall Alleman, right? 3 times in 1 week, right?
It was the first time we ever met him, actually, because Ron had already brought up his name.
Yeah.
Then Gil, we ran into him at the MGM, and he goes, hey, I want you to meet someone.
Yeah.
And it was you. And that's when you walked away. He goes, hey, this guy's going to be real big. And me and George did and then as soon as you walked away, we went, dude.
I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
We had just walked out of Frankie versus Maynard, so that's like the top of the top lightweight at the time. So we couldn't even put our mind into oh really, he wrestled and he's got hands, maybe he could take Frankie, or we our minds were just in another level at that point. But it was 3 times in 1 week, and then as it was all unplaying there at Bellator, because remember, you guys used to go 30 days fight, 30 days fight, 30 days tournament final, and
I fought 13 times I fought 6 times in 13 months. I fought September, October of 2010, and then March, April, May, November of 2011 won the world title. So that was the craziest 13 months of my life. And that was the craziest time of my life. And that's why I tell these young kids, all these young kids coming into Sanford MMA, and they got their flashy Conor McGregor style, and they're young and they're just full of piss and vinegar. And I'm like, man, y'all don't even know what it's like. I went out to Vegas with no money in my pocket. I was getting beat up by Gray Maynard, Mike Pyle, Jay Huron, Evan Dunham, Tyson Griffin, Forrest Griffin, Vitor Belfort, all of these guys, having to cut my teeth. And I was just a wrestler, right? So I was the good new wrestler in the room. So everybody wanted to go with me, and I needed to go rounds with everybody to help them with the wrestling. And these young kids, man, the young little whippersnappers, man, they don't know what they have.
That's awesome, man. Great stories. All right, Michael Chandler, thanks so much for the time. At this point, it's just a weight cut, some long travel. So safe travel, have a good weight cut, and then, hey, if it's your time to fight because one of the other 2 can't go, go out there and do what you've always done. You know, you've always given your best. So we'll be watching. That is the biggest card of the year. Can't wait for it to go down. And thank you again for the time you gave us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys, man. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you very soon.